Welcome and welcome back, everybody, to the OK Grognard Show. Today is Wednesday, March 11th, 2026, 10 a.m. Central in beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. And today we're going to look at a section of the first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master's Guide on approaches to playing AD&D. It's easy enough to fathom there, I imagine. The section's on page 9 of the DMG, and is it straightforward? Some people would say maybe not so much. Let's have a look at it, and you can decide as we go over it and then discuss it a little further. Approaches to playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Now, obviously, was unnecessary to call it first edition or 1E or anything like that in these days, because being first, it needed no designation. Gary writes, and this is published in 79, so probably written in late 78, right? Yeah. That makes sense. A few brief words are necessary to ensure that the reader has actually obtained a game form which he or she desires. Of the two approaches to hobby games today, one is best defined as the realism simulation school, and the other as the game school. AD&D is assuredly an adherent of the latter school. It does not stress any realism, parenthetically, in the author's opinion, an absurd effort at best considering the topic. It does little to attempt to simulate anything either. Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is first and foremost a game for the fun and enjoyment of those who seek to use imagination and creativity. This is not to say that where it does not interfere with the flow of the game, that the highest degree of realism hasn't been attempted. But neither is it a serious approach to play, discouraged. In all cases, however, the reader should understand that AD&D is designed to be an amusing and diverting pastime, something which can fill a few hours or consume endless days, as the participants desire, but in no case something to be taken too seriously. For fun, excitement, and captivating fantasy, AD&D is unsurpassed. As a realistic simulation of things from the realm of make-believe, or even as a reflection of medieval or ancient warfare or culture or society, it can be deemed only a dismal failure. Readers who seek the latter must search elsewhere. Those who desire to create and populate imaginary worlds with larger-than-life heroes and villains, who seek relaxation with a fascinating game, and who generally believe games should be fun, not work, will hopefully find this system to their taste. So, this is 1978-79. This is 5 years into the run of Dungeons & Dragons as a game, starting with that original 3-booklet box, and in 76, out came the first edition Monster Manual. 77, the Player's Handbook, and now this Dungeon Master's Guide. There were some basic Dungeons & Dragons releases as streamlined rule sets, entry points, trying to make original D&D a little more accessible to those who were looking to play and had heard about this great game. Those were available in more than just hobby locations very quickly, including department stores and in big box stores. They weren't really called that then, but that's what they were, right? Kmart and Sears, I guess, is a department store. Woolworth, Woolco, places like that. In any event, they were around, and they were around also in hobby stores, which were also some were comic shops, some were railroad or craft stores, railroad hobby stores, which had plenty of the kinds of things that wargamers would need, like terrain that they could build for their wargaming tables. So while these things were available in every way, there wasn't an assurance that they were going to get into the hands of people who understood what they were picking up. They would see this fancy covers on the books and the boxes. They would see exciting fantasy scenes depicted, and they needed to understand that this isn't the long line of war games that stretched back to Tactics 2 in the 50s. It isn't also a parlor game like Risk or Clue or Monopoly or one of those very popular games that other people would have picked up. So it's not tempting in any way to simulate like the game of life or the what was the landlord's game and became Monopoly. You weren't attempting to buy and sell properties and put up houses and hotels and collect rents. And unlike war games, you weren't simulating a battle, and you weren't attempting to have any sort of realism as far as that is concerned when it comes to something like a battle simulation game. And some of these features of Dungeons and Dragons, things on the order of hit points and armor class and all of those things, were concepts ported over from war games, but they weren't meant to be simulationist in the same sense as in war games, where there were supposed to be one-to-one comparisons between how long your life lasted and how many hit points you had. So can understand that it's different from those other games in that respect. The idea that it is broadly a fantasy game, and very much Gary was often quoted as saying that it was more like a cross between Let's Pretend and improv classes, or improv exercises, improv games that improvisational theater would conduct. So, a very different approach to the game as well. And game indeed it was, because it was not meant to have a foreseen outcome. The players were meant to create characters and explore an environment. And in that setting, the Dungeon Master was meant to be their eyes and ears and to show them what they could see, facilitate their senses within that setting, and give them options and let them make choices. And they were meant to then explore and go on adventures. Not something that was in other games at the time. So this decent-sized paragraph was meant to put people at ease that this game was not going to be like other games, and yet it was going to be fun. It was going to be exciting, and it was going to be something fresh and new for people that were used to those other games. So there you go. Vince is in the chat. Vince says, do you have to remember your first AD&D character or a character you played in the early days that made you fall in love with the game? I do not. I simply don't remember any specific characters from the earliest attempts at original D&D, and by the time we got into Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, we'd been playing for 4 or 5 years, right, at that point. It was a transition. By the time the DMG came out, we had been playing for 5 years, and we had incorporated stuff from the Monster Manual and the Player's Handbook along the way, kind of integrating those things into the game we were already playing, using what made sense to use and not necessarily. Of course, there were some characters I could recall. An elf named Jonathan Spellflinger, who was a fighter magic user, who I recall getting up into fairly high, let's say upper mid levels and stuff. So much so that when we, much like Vince, what you're doing in my own campaign most recently, cleared out a tower, took it over, settled inside, made it our own. I don't recall a lot more than that, but you know, that's 47 years ago in 79, right? It's quite some time. If I remembered everything from back then, I would be probably quite afraid. Very, very afraid. In any event, I hope everybody enjoyed this passage. This is going to be up on YouTube within the hour or so, so feel free to make comments about your own takes on this passage. You know, with Gary already gone, nobody's wrong. So don't worry about your interpretation being second guessed. Vince, I'll count on you to post a reply in the YouTube channel too, and I know our buddy Martin will probably do the same when he gets around to it, and hopefully other people will as well. Thanks so much for joining us here today. Let me say that this has been the OK Grognard Show. We've been talking about the first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons Dungeon Master Guide section, page 9, on approaches to playing Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Show streams live on Twitch each Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central. Then it's archived on YouTube. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, and all that other great stuff. Thanks to Vince for being in the chat, and thanks to everyone who checks out the show. It's very much appreciated. You can support the channel even at the free level on Patreon and join such illustrious individuals as Tom Tellis of Fat Dragon Games, Carlos Lysing of Castle Entertainment, Heath Varnon of the AD&D 20, Dave O'Brien, unauthorized user, Dethangel Shadow, Heidi and Eric, Gygax Garland of Gaxland, Vince Ragusa of the Maroon Room, an excellent prog rock band, Daniel Caldwell of Griffin and Gargoyle, Martin Thomas of Daddy Roll a One, a great YouTube channel, Christian Garcia, Stephanie Lesniewski-Gruchow, Cera Toppilopkus, Colin Szablewski, Sergeant Zeno, Bruiser, Nate Mosier, Rod Garcia, John Smith, and as always, Shane Bradley, DM Extraordinaire. This has been the OK Grognard Show from beautiful Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Thank you, and bye-bye.